90% target language and culturally responsive teaching. Reframing world language teaching with an equity lens. The purpose is to create a positive classroom culture where class members are inspired and accountable to use the target language. This means using fewer punitive ways to get kids to speak the target language and more positive ways to compel them to speak. Resources for this presentation are available on rocketlanguage.org. You can still participate in the live survey at www.menti.com and then enter the code for the survey 665797. Obviously, people are listening to this presentation on different time frames. That's okay. The survey is still live and open. You can see the results of the people who voted before you. This presentation was done by Dr. Bridget Yaden from Pacific Lutheran University and me, Paris Granville, the World Language Curriculum Lead from Bellevue, Washington. I'd like to briefly share my racial autobiography with you. I grew up in Iowa, which is a place very rural, lots of open spaces, and lots of people descended from Europeans. Mostly white people, and so it was a place where white European culture was dominant, and as you can see, we all kind of look the same. This is me right here. So now it's a much later time and it's much different. One of the things is that the students that I'm teaching now look very different from the students I grew up with. So that means that I need to rethink some of the ways that I'm teaching. And the lived experience of some of our students of color is maybe not always positive. This shows up in the discipline data. I'm not sure why Bellevue's cut off, but it is. But it doesn't really matter. Bellevue's looks the same. Let's go ahead and take Seattle. So what you're looking for here, your orange is the percent of the school district that is that ethnicity. So for instance, in Seattle, 16.2% of the district is Asian. But only 8% of the Asians receive disciplinary action. This means that they're not disciplined as much. So then you might have some questions about what's going on there. This is just discipline data. We could also look at other data, but for instance, panorama data that shows how satisfied the students are. But in this case, we're just looking at discipline data. However, when you look at the data for black students in Seattle or any place else for that matter, you see big differences in the number of black students that are disciplined. They're disciplined disproportionately. Really, there's big differences all the way down the list. Sometimes, if you look at Highline, they're disciplined twice as much. North Shore is almost in line. As you can see, most districts, even like Washington, which has a smaller population of black students, it's still about 3 times as much. Same for Bellevue, even though it's cut off. You'll notice similar patterns in other ethnicities too. However, each district has its own particularities, but the one thing's for sure is that there's often students of color being underserved. And at the classroom level, we have to think about what that means for us. The good news is the solution's in the room, meaning I, as a white teacher, can listen to all my students, students from different backgrounds from me, students with similar backgrounds than me, and in collaborating with the students and my colleagues, I can find a way to be more supportive of my students. Dr. Zaretta Hammond outlined 4 things we need to do to be able to heighten engagement for each and every student, even students who are culturally, linguistically, and ethnically different from us. 1, relationships. And with students who are culturally, racially different from us, there's a good opportunity to learn about them because their lived experience is different from ours. Rigor, relevance, and real or realness. When all 4 of these things are in place, then and only then do we see heightened engagement. Now, Zaretta Hammond obviously was writing for a general education audience. Dr. Bridget Yaden and I have worked to apply this to world language teaching and specifically creating a culture for target language use. From our perspective, the relationships in the world language classroom can really be foregrounded. We literally have no content. We have a lot of communication to happen, but whatever we talk about is almost irrelevant. So we can focus on the students and talk about the students' culture, compare the students' culture to the target cultures. Rigor. In the context of the world language classroom, rigor means proficiency. Relevance. We can gain relevance through social justice themes or essential questions, similar to in the AP. And real, showing up as our authentic self, allows us to have real, authentic communication as we exchange ideas and learn about each other in the classroom. And again, that's when we get heightened engagement.